Let's talk about by far the star of the show, which is remote viewing, and these gentlemen's suggestion that you can astrally project. So remote viewing is that idea of that part of yourself reaching out and comprehending something out and drawing back information. Now, they had a lot of problems when they tried it because it worked. They sat down, they projected out, they got the hemisync thing going, and then they projected out their astral body, and they got some guys to sit in New York, I think it was, or on the East Coast, and then they got some people in a university over on the West Coast to pull up a computer and write out 10 words or 10 numbers. And these got these people to astrally project, and they all went over there, and they all went to this university room, and they went and they looked at the computer astrally in their mind. They're still in New York, but their remote body has gone and done this, and they all collected the numbers, and they all came back and they wrote them down. And most of the time, they got about, I think it was 5 to 6 to 7 correct, but they never got all of them correct. So it was like sort of generally getting it right. Okay, there was a sort of high enough majority for these people running these experiments to announce, yes, this is real. These people are actually astrally projecting to the other side of the country and seeing information and correctly interpreting what it is, which is nuts. That is really crazy. But the problem, and this is the reason why I said earlier that they are a little bit tentative about it, is that it wasn't accurate enough to be something that they could rely on with immense sufficiency. And so they spent some time trying to develop more sophisticated techniques and tools to try to get accuracy. For example, they get like 3 people to go at the same time, and would there be any patterns associated that would get you the full number? But they can never get 10. They can never get 10 out of 10. It was always vague, but it often seemed to work. Okay? Very high hit rate. Now that's unbelievably profound. God knows what that even means, man. Like, that's so hard to know. Now, they discussed the reasons why it didn't work for a variety of different reasons. Well, there's a huge amount of different reasons, but all these things such as like other people's consciousness being in the world, like crosses signals, and sometimes it's not as straightforward. Your right brain is not necessarily like your left brain. It's not obsessed with clarity. It's obsessed more with general vibe and urges, and that's not something that's clear. Not something that's vague. But it's all very, very cool stuff, and something that is profound to think that these guys were doing these experiments and it seems like they worked. I don't know what to make it out. I don't think you do either. And then you won't know what to make of this next one. The next thing they tried, and this is one of their advanced techniques, was Focus 15, traveling into the past. All of the preceding techniques are conducted at a level of expanded awareness known as Focus 12. However, the technique of time travel into the past involves further expansion of consciousness through the inclusion of additional levels of sound on the hemisync tapes. Some frequencies being designed to further modify brainwave frequency and amplitude. I didn't read that right. Other aspects of the added sound patterns appear to be designed to provide subtle, almost subliminal suggestions to the mind as to what is desired by way of further expanding consciousness, so to support the verbal suggestions and instructions also contained in the tape. Even the instructions are highly symbolic, with time being visualized as a huge wheel in the universe with various spokes, each of which gives access to a different part of the participant's past. Focus 15 is a very advanced state and is extremely difficult to achieve. Probably less than 5% of all participants in any given gateway experience actually fully achieve the Focus 15 state during the course of approximately 7 days of training. Nonetheless, Monroe Institute trainers affirm that with enough practice, eventually Focus 15 can be achieved. They also state that not only the individual's past history is available for examination by one who has achieved Focus 15, but other aspects of the past with which the individual himself has no connection may also be accessed. That is crazy. That genuinely is crazy. Now, what are they saying there? And this is just mind-blowing. They're saying that they were able to time travel. They were able to remote view into the past. So they go into that hard drive, like I said, and they go to an earlier version of the saved game. And they could see stuff. And they could see stuff that wasn't, that they had no way that they could have seen it. Now, how might this work? This is quite a hard one to conceptualize. They didn't give any examples, but I'm going to run with an assumption. They probably sat down with someone and said to them, go to 1912 to Manhattan on the 15th of February 1912 and go to the main street and tell me what you see. And so the person would sit down, they visualize it, and they might walk down, they'd see like an advertisement and maybe a carriage. and they look at the clock and it's like noon, and then they come back. And then they say to them, all right, this is what I saw. Now, this is something that there's no way in hell that they could have been there. And unless they saw a video or something like that, which is like, were there that many videos of that? It's very, very unlikely. And then the people doing the test maybe had a photo or something like that. And so they would have get them to describe what they saw. And then they describe, for example, advertisement in the top right corner of the building. And they look at the photo and boom, there it is. And they sort of nod to them and be like, okay, that looks like it worked. That looked like it worked. That looked like it was real. That was a remote viewing of the past. And so you can almost visit the past as a ghost or something like that. Now, that's how I'd imagine it works. Again, they didn't give any examples, but again, they put this stuff here. So I assume that they had something, they had a reason to back it up. And never mind the future, which they talk about as well, that you can perceive forward in time as well. But nonetheless, like, it's there. And it's a suggestion, and I guess you can see the theory behind it, that as to why all this stuff would work, which is absolutely mind-blowing when you think about it. So I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to give that a wrap, just because you've got a sort of broad overview, and this should open your mind up to this, because I guess the big conclusion that I want to run with is that this puts on the table something that is hard for us to access as Westerners. I like all this stuff. I was into all this stuff for parts of my life, but every now and again my left brain, my rationality, my the zeitgeist comes online inside my mind and tells me to dismiss this stuff. Meditation, like it's just sort of an Eastern practice that is for keeping yourself calm. Visualization, it's like woo-woo hippie crap. Now, that's all well and good, but what these guys are suggesting is that these tools can actually be utilized for incredible assets. How much you can trust this, I don't really know. Again, like, we take it with a grain of salt. It's the CIA. They could be trolling. They might, like, this doesn't mean they're affirming this. They're saying this operation happened. Doesn't mean any of this stuff is as real maybe as you think. It's just, it's just take it for what it is, I guess. But nonetheless, it opens the question. It's like, well, how much is going on? Like, what's really happening? And I guess the way that I'd wrap this up with a lot of boyos who are watching, who like work with me, and we do stuff like diving into the body and the emotions, and I try to get people into the right brain, and I've done this quite intuitively, and it's amazing finding stuff like this because it affirms everything I'm doing already. But one thing I would often do with people is bring them back to traumatic experiences of the past, and it makes me think. It makes me think, when you're traveling to the past, are you in some sense going back to a wounded child, frozen in time, picking them up and just letting them know that they're not alone? And it makes you wonder that in that moment when you were that kid and that bad thing happened to you, and eventually you picked yourself up, eventually your spirit lifted and picked yourself up, it makes me wonder, were you there as your astral older self? Is it possible stuff like that happens? That you're walking around as a kid and bad things are happening, future you is coming back. And it makes me think about big characters in the world, like big heroes, that when they buckle and fall. Think about Jesus carrying that cross. And when he buckles and falls, think about how many people astrally projected back to Galilee, get back to Jerusalem during that period. Think about how many people have walked with that man through that final thing, and you wonder, as he was going up to Golgotha, as he was going up to the hill, how many people were walking alongside with him, how many people were carrying that cross as well, egging him on. And you really wonder, because this is an energetic thing. This is people sending energy into the universe, into the hard drive and going somewhere. Like, would he have been able to feel that?